Hey, welcome to a recap video of my match with opperwezen and also my match with JannLee for the Crazyhouse Teamleague Season 8. And it's both two games, one white game, one black game. And today I decided not to go through the whole games, but pick some moments by request, but also just because I find it interesting for my own play where I went wrong or where my opponent went wrong or where a tough decision had to be made. And in this particular first game, I had white with against opperwezen, and we had a e4 e5 structure, and I deviated in the opening to avoid some theoretical lines, and now black has a small advantage. And here I played the move bishop at g5, and bishop at g5 was a big blunder, and that's because white had a very easy response once you see it, and that's queen takes g5. And I take it back. Maybe there's a better move, but already I'm just that lost, even if I don't take it back but try something else. He plays knight takes f2, I have to move my king, and he takes my queen. I have no threats around black king, and next move he's just taking on f3, and I can only defend it with my queen, so I'm just gonna lose this game very quickly, so I decided to resign. But why did I play bishop at g5? Just missing this idea. You feel like it's safe because the bishops are covering each other, but in thinking you don't think about knight takes f2, so now it's a lesson for me to think about what pieces are defending what. And actually this piece is the one that you have to watch out for, because this one is overloaded, and opperwezen just capitalized very cleanly on that. Just to show another way the game could have gone if I played something else. Let's say take here, and this of course is not forced, but he can take the queen and I attack his queen, then I take back this bishop or this one, and there's still something to be played for. Black is probably better, but if the g file's open and I have knights in hand, I may have chances to get back in the game. So that's the first position I wanted to show you in terms of decision making. How do you go on in your position? How do you play? And then you have to realize this bishop is really important that it stays on f2. So I cannot go bishop at g5 or bishop at h6 because he will trade it, and I need my bishop defended. Okay, first one, easy start. Second one is this particular position, and this one is a bit harder to understand, and it features an idea I did not see in the game, but now that I know it, I know that the correct move is king d8 to play. I blocked pawn at d6, but we'll look at the end of the game after it, because opper finishes very cleanly, and that's also nice to see, of course. But he played queen at b4, covering c3, but also attacking b7. So the normal response, or you would think, is queen takes b7, picking up the rook, and play pawn at e7, knight at d5, and just winning the game. But black has an incredible resource here, and that is pawn at d2, which is made by force. Maybe I of course missed this idea, otherwise I probably would have played king d8. But once you see this idea, you can I'll show it to you first, but then you got to realize I need the pawn in hand, so I should not block with this. First, let's go to e2. Queen at d3 takes, queen c2, forcing the king back to e2, and promotes. to queen, and then the 2 queens check, and there's no way to go. The very powerful double check promoting. Okay, so that's the first one. Of course, the king can also just take the pawn. Then we have queen c2, back to e1, only move. Queen takes f2, take the knight, also only move once again. Really nice queen c2, back again, and now you grab the pawn on f2, so you can put a pawn on f2 yourself. Really nice how the queen went back and forth to c2 and f2. So that's the second pattern, featuring the queen's movements instead of the promote. And there is a third move. The king can also take the knight, but then it sort of transposes in the king e2 line. But we just get there quicker. As you remember, the queen first went to d3 and then to c2. So this is just quicker. Okay, so that's the idea in this position. Pawn at d2 wins the game by force if there's not a move played to cover the queen at c2, basically. Because in every line the queen had enters c2. In this one, and then in when king takes d2, there's also queen at c2. So once you know that in this position, this one I mean, you realize if it's my move and I'm not in check, then pawn at d2 mates, with the idea of queen c2 and taking here or promoting the pawn wherever he goes. And then you figure that out, and then you think, okay, then king d8 must be the best move. Otherwise it's really counterintuitive to play king d8 because the pawn already mates you. In one, pawn at e7, king here, queen takes b7 is mate. So it's really counterintuitive. Opperwezen told me already after the game that he saw this idea, that he would probably have played bishop a4. And then the game continues. I'm not sure what I would have played here. I just didn't see the idea of pawn d2. But it's a really nice resource to get. And I played pawn d6 and hoped for the best, but pawn d2, really nice move to spot and to keep in mind when defending. What do I need when my opponent's attack is over? What do I need to mate him? For example, it will also be very counterintuitive to block with the knight here. If you're not seeing the pawn at d2 mate, but the more obvious move you probably did spot, that's knight at c2, picking up the queen. That's one. So you probably want to keep the knight in hand. So therefore I blocked with the pawn. And Opperwezen finished really nicely with the knight at d5. Now he picked up the pawn. I have no pawn at d2, so I'm not mated, and he can take the rook next. I tried to run to h7, but he took the rook, and then he just took the knight. Now I have 2 queens in hand, but there's no way I can make them useful. Knight at c2, just king d2, and the king is perfectly safe, as seen in the game. I tried queen at b2. I could have tried maybe to play some defensive move, like let's say queen here or something. But I feel like, well, if he needs to, he can defend even, but I think a move like rook at d8, queen at b2 might be a bit problematic. But probably he can just play a slower move, and black only has a queen in hand, for example rook at b2 or something, if he wants to be absolutely safe, and play rook at d8 next. And now he has a very nice mate with rook at g8, forcing my king to g8. Then he can play a pawn at d7 and put a new rook on e8 and wins the game. Okay, so that's my my mini match with opperwezen. He took it 2-0, and the week after I had to play JannLee. And first we got a really nice ideas in this position. We got a really rich game. Let me check. Yeah, it was some e4, d5, and we both pushed our pawn. So I got a quick pawn on d4 and he on e5. And white is better in this position, but he has to be really careful. And a move suggested that I would take a look at is the pawn at g7 by white. And pawn at g7 is it's a tempting move, because if let's state the obvious threat, that's of course queen at h8. But black obviously wants to do something against that. Let's check the second obvious idea. Taking here. And this is probably something that can't be survived. Okay, the king can run to here, but and he's safe for the moment. But I guess white will be getting some material and then mate the king. Not entirely sure how, but the queen is defending the white king as well, so this looks really good. So king takes g7 also here, not a move you're going to play. So then you have to think as black, okay, I'm lost if I let the attack happen, I'm lost if I defend. So what do? I need to go after the king of white. And the first move you always look then at is knight at h3 or knight at f3, trying to break open the king. Let's check knight at f3 just for purposes. If you take, then the king is open. You can try something, but you don't have to take. White can just run here and then the attack stops. You need another knight basically. Let's say you play this. If you take with the pawn, queen at h2 is made, so you take like this, queen at g1, rook g1, and now you are missing a knight for the mate. But that's an interesting idea to remember for if you have 3 knights. The knight at f3 and knight at g3 is a nice idea sometimes. But the more obvious, mostly played move is knight at h3, because this is a more known idea. If the king moves, there's the smothered mate, and most Crazyhouse players have this smothered mate sometimes on the board, so they know this idea by heart. So the only move here to play for white is g takes, and now you gotta continue, because you are mated. Queen at h8 is still mate, and you sacrificed the knight, so you gotta continue, because now even with the knight extra, it will be way easier for white to mate you. So you gotta keep up the checks. Knight at f3. Okay, let's check first the one that's losing very quickly. If the king moves back, queen at g2, and otherwise you have queen at f3, take the knight, and checkmate. The pawn is covering g5, and the queen is covered by the bishop. So the king steps to h1, obviously. And now the only check to continue the game is queen at g2. So you gotta play it. But actually here, when you look at this position, this would be a position you can go for as black. You can see this position and then think, okay, let's try it. The obvious idea is of course this, so you cannot really block, and the king has to move to e2. And from here you can try to calculate again what are the best moves. If you are here at this moment, you realized, okay, knight at h3 is needed, and then it's kind of forced. Otherwise it's mate, so this is the best moves for white, every move. And then we have bishop takes h3, king e2, and now you need to continue the checks and need to find a way to mate. And therefore it's important that probably it's important that you keep the pieces. So a move like rook at e1 would come to mind, but then you can take here and the checks run out. Rook g1, something like this. And because you lost your knight, you just miss a couple of pieces to continue attacking. So you need to keep your pieces. So therefore knight g1 in this situation instead of a rook drop or a pawn drop. The king cannot run here, the king cannot run here. So the king has to go somewhere back or to either of these squares. And the funny thing is that every square is actually a forced mate for black. Let's do this one first. This is the easiest one. Doesn't matter where the king goes. Rook at d1. So the king should not go to d1. King e1. And now you play rook at f1. It's the only check. You gotta keep checking. The king can only go to d2. You play pawn d3. Takes. You use the rook again. The king only can go to d2. Every move is check. King d1. Rook f1. Block with something. Bishop g4. Block. And that's the longest sequence. There's also there was also king d2, but this is a bit easier because if the king goes back, there's again this checkmate, and if the king steps back to e1, sorry, there's another pawn drop and a rook on the back rank. And if the king takes the pawn, there's rook at e2, checkmate. And there's also king c3, but then there's pawn at b4 with the help of the rook at on b8, checkmate. So very long sequence that's basically forced mate after knight at h3. And of course a human player cannot see that this is mate, but I would have played it probably instantly after realizing that king takes g7 or another way of defending is just insufficient. And then you need to find the ideas, of course. The basic instinct is that king h1, queen at g1, knight takes f2, as we saw, the smothered mate is mate. And that's one probably some people will still fall for, so you can always try that. But after this you just keep the check, every move is check. I can go through it again, but already told you, every move is check, and the king ends up on e2. And we see that our pieces can block the f-file nicely, like this. And then we have to use the rook and pawn in the right way to checkmate. So of course I did not see the forced mate in 15, I think it is, or something. But I felt like if he doesn't play a forcing move, knight at h3 must be tried. But JannLee didn't play at g7. I didn't ask him about it, but I think he had some feel for the position that knight at h3 could be dangerous. So he played queen at g3. And now he attacked me. And actually this is really strong for white. Okay, the game continued for a bit. I tried knight at h3 anyway, just to break open the position. Because here, if he takes the queen with the h pawn, queen at h2 is of course mate. If he takes with the f pawn, there might be some tricks. But actually here he missed a really nice chance to checkmate me as well. And again, I'm just gonna show it to you. You can try to figure it out if you want, but then you need to pause it if you like. But the idea is to take here. You gotta take back, only move, and then play bishop at h6. The most obvious move is to block. If you don't block but run, there are lots of pieces in hand that should be sufficient. So pawn at g7 is the most tenacious move to try to keep the game going. But now you make use of the fact there's only a queen in hand, and this is the most prettiest one. To block, I'll show queen e7 first, or king e7 first, knight at c6, king d7, knight c5, king e7, bishop at e7. By the way, it could also go the other way around. It doesn't really matter. But what happens after rook at h8? Queen at g8. And this is a theme that sometimes is forgotten, and it's the theme about no blockers. And when I say no blockers, you probably already think, oh yeah, it's bishop at c5. Normally bishop at c5 isn't that strong in these types of situations, because just the pawn at d6 blocks everything. And your move is a bit silly, but there are no pieces in hand, so the king has to move. Then the queen is taken. Still no blocker, so the king has to move again. And you can drop the queen here for mate in one, here. But the most beautiful way is queen at f5. Making this again about the fact that black has nothing left. And this really nice geometry, I'd say. Okay. JannLee missed this idea, sadly, for him. Also sadly because he didn't manage to win the game in the end. If you win after a missed mate, you're not as disappointed as if you don't win the game. At least that's the case with me. So I went for queen at g2 here. Again, thinking about, okay, let's try checks, because otherwise I'm just dead. He can take here, queen at g8, and I cannot do anything about that. And okay, if I can take the rook with check, I might have chances for, again, some sort of checkmate. So I'm keeping check here. King f2, pawn at e3, and here he made a mistake. He should have taken the bishop on e3, making sure that some squares around his king are not controlled anymore. For example, now if I play d4 and the checks run out after, let's say, rook here takes bishop at g2, it's over. And next he can take here, knight at f5, whatever. There are too many threats. Of course, you can also think about taking the rook and then play rook at e3 to cover your knights. But again, the checks run out. So he needed to take here with the bishop on e3, also to create maybe a path for his king to run to. But he took here. I took the rook. Of course you cannot take here because of rook at f2 and the knight covering these squares. This makes this pawn really important. King takes f3, and here I played e4, and he played king f3, king f4, but he had a better move there. He could have gone to g4. And then the idea that happens in the game is no longer available. I'll show you the idea in the game now. Now I played e4, he went king f4. And here I went rook at f2. And rook at f2 is actually forced draw in the game. The game went as follows: king g4, bishop here to check, king h3, bishop back. And this is how the game ended, in a draw. Why didn't he try another square, you might ask, after bishop e2? Okay, there's only one square available, and that's h4. So I take, he blocks, I gain the pawn at g5, checkmate. Okay, and why didn't he go there after bishop f1? So bishop e2, king h3, bishop f1, king h4 again, rook takes. Okay, so if you go here, bishop here, blocker, taking, and that should be even helping black, so you need to keep running. What was it again? I guess rook h5, yeah. Blocking doesn't help, and then pawn e5. Doing this off the top of my head because I figured in the game, it's been a while since I played it, but I figured in the game he had to accept the draw because otherwise I had mate. And this is the sequence for if the bishop is on f1. So this ended in a repetition of moves, and that's I wanted to show you that one because it's really rare that a game ends in a draw. Compared to normal chess, it's a really rare occasion in Crazyhouse, and it's basically most of the time because of a repetition of continuous pawn drops that keep repetitioning, or a perpetual check like this one. Okay, fourth game. Not much to say about this one, but there's an interesting position I want to show you. Let's see. Ah, yeah, here. And in particular, two moves after that. Here you got it. Here I'm white. I feel like I'm slightly better, but I need a way to continue the attack. And what I try to do is try to go after these squares. And I try to trade it away a defender, but bishop takes f7. But after bishop takes f7, he took over the game and won pretty quickly. So I needed to find a better move than bishop takes f7. Bishop takes f7, now that I look at it, is, of course, after the game it's easier to say, but then you'd see, okay, this is a really important piece. It's defending and it's also attacking, but I need to keep it here. And once you figure that out, that you need to keep the bishop on its square, you will find another move. And one of those moves should involve attacking the black king, and especially on the light squares, because his dark squares are, for now, well, sufficiently covered. So another move probably would be pawn at d7 here, for example, or pawn at e6, trying to get in on the light squares. And it's nowhere near from over, I feel, but it's one of those positions that you sometimes have as well, I guess, where you don't know how to continue, but you feel like, okay, I need to make a good decision here, and how do I go about that? And I thought this was a nice position to show. You're in your own camp, your dark squares are all right. You have to be a bit careful about queen a1 maybe, and your light squares are a bit under attack, like here. So what is your important defender? This bishop. So you need to keep this bishop on its post, and you need to attack on the light squares, as we saw before, because this dark square defense is sufficient for now. And then you come to the decision, okay, I'll play pawn d6. And these kind of long processes go very quickly most of the times in my head, but also then that makes it that you make mistakes like bishop takes f7. But I just wanted to give you that one from this position. I could make more comments on that on other positions as well. I might do that in another video. Let's just check how this game ended. Queen at a1. I had to block. He took my knight. I tried to attack somehow, but he defended very correctly. As you can see, there's no way in with a knight on g5 or something like that, because he's just too well defended around his king. And next he's going to play knight at e2, crush me. So I decided to resign the game. Alright, that was it. This video featuring opperwezen and JannLee. I managed to score half a point out of 4 games, so maybe I should just be happy with the half a point. The draw theme was very nice, and there were also some really nice ideas in that position later on with the checkmating sequence. Earlier on with the checkmating sequences I showed. Last round is next week. I don't think my team has any chance of winning the league, but I get to play International Master GSVC then, I think. And let's see if we can get a couple of good games against him. And I will try to make a separate video on that as well. For now, I wish you a very good day, wherever you are.